Dogman Declassified, the latest book from W.J. Brendel, Ph.D. Real reports. Consistent patterns, no clear answers. Take a closer look at the evidence. Available now.
Welcome to Forever Paranormal, where shadows remember and silence has a way of speaking. I'm Dr. Bill, your guide through the strange and the unexplainable.
And I'm Deb. Every week we dig into what hides between belief and proof. Cryptids, hauntings, witchcraft, UFO sightings, and the stories people swear are true.
We don't tell you what to believe. We just look at what's possible, what's been witnessed, and what refuses to stay quiet.
If you like what we do, follow, rate, and share the show. It helps keep the lights on.
And if you want to go deeper, step inside the crypt. Patreon members get the show ad-free a full day early and gain access to our entire archives, years of investigations, bonus episodes, and conversations we don't release anywhere else. You can join at foreverparanormal.com or by searching Forever Paranormal The Crypt on Patreon.
And remember that you're never alone. If you ever need someone to talk to, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is 988.
You wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat. The image is still there. A goat's head, dark eyes, curved horns reaching into the shadows. You don't know where you've seen it before, but you know exactly what it is. Or at least you think you do. For millions of people, that image has become synonymous with Baphomet and Satan. The strange thing is that when we follow the history, the story, well, it becomes far more complicated. Welcome back to Forever Paranormal, where we know Natinak is more than a myth and where the veil is thin. Ghosts walk beside us and strange craft drift above us. The creatures move just out of sight. Every story is a door between worlds, and this week we step through one of the most recognizable occult symbols in the modern world to ask a surprisingly simple question. Who or what is Baphomet? Hello there, my little troublemaker.
Hello.
How's life this week?
It's busy, busy, busy. How about you?
Oh, it's okay. I know you've been really busy, and so I'm going to ask you, what did you find for us this week? I hope you had time to.
Okay, so as if Mount Shasta isn't strange enough already,
It's a strange place, yeah.
on June 27th, 2026, a mother and daughter named Carrie Ann Snur, I think, and her child were horseback riding near Mount Shasta, California, when they stumbled upon a bizarre installation. While the area is already famous for UFO lore and theories about a hidden Lemurian civilization, this discovery was entirely new. Hundreds of solar-powered Bluetooth speakers planted directly into the ground.
Okay, then.
As they ventured further, the pair heard strange otherworldly noises echoing from the devices. Some speakers emitted eerie, unidentifiable sounds, while others played what sounded like a sermon. The sheer scale of the field, with no obvious creator or purpose, left the women baffled. The incident has added a fresh layer of mystery to the already enigmatic Mount Shasta region, leaving locals and investigators wondering who installed the audio system and why. Bill, do you want to weigh in with an opinion?
Yeah, Deb, thanks for asking that, because I do have an opinion on this, because I looked into this pretty hard, I went through Newsweek and a bunch of other stories about it, and one thing I found out was all these speakers ended up actually being on private property. So there's a lot of theories out there when you hit Reddit and all the different boards about, what they are, and they're summoning UFOs or summoning demons or this or that or whatever. But one of the more logical explanations I ran across was, there were sermons, but not many speakers. There's a lot of white noise and different things like that. And apparently someone's theory, which I'm kind of buying into, is that it's to scare off the amount of wolves that are there now. It's actually on a cattle ranch. So there's a lot of wolf activity there. So maybe that's what it's all about. I don't know. Maybe they all are calling out to the Lemurians from underground, or maybe they are calling UFOs. I don't know, but I kind of buy that reason for it. You know that there are very few occult images that almost everyone recognizes. A goat's head with massive horns, a torch burning between them, and whether people fear it, whether they worship it or just dismiss it, most believe they know exactly what they're looking at. So this week, we're going to challenge that assumption.
I think you're right about that. If somebody showed me a picture of Baphomet, I might immediately think demon or Satan. I don't think I'd hesitate.
Well, that's exactly why we're talking about it, though.
Well, that's not the answer I was expecting.
Well, because it's the answer that most people would give. In fact, if I stopped people on the street and held up a picture of Baphomet, I bet most would say either Satan, the devil, or some kind of demon.
Isn't that what it is?
Not really.
Well, that's a pretty shaky start.
It is, but that's honestly where the history takes us.
You're telling me we're doing an entire episode on Baphomet and you're not even sure what it is.
No, I'm telling you that historians, religious scholars, occultists, and researchers have been arguing about it for a very long time. Pretty much since the Knights Templar were put on trial for heresy.
Okay, now you've got my attention.
All right, most people think Baphomet has always been this goat-headed figure. They assume the image goes back hundreds, maybe thousands of years. But the reality is much stranger.
How much stranger?
Well, let's start with a simple question. When do you think the first image of Baphomet appeared?
I don't know, medieval period, maybe the Crusades, since you mentioned the Templars.
Well, that's what I used to think too.
That's not encouraging.
No, because if we're talking about the image everyone recognizes today, we're not talking about the Middle Ages at all.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Okay, now I'm confused because if the image isn't medieval, where did it come from?
We're going to get there, but before we can talk about the image, we have to talk about the name. And that's where things get interesting. The name Baphomet first enters the historical record during one of the most dramatic events in medieval history, Friday the 13th, 1307.
Is that the original bad luck Friday the 13th?
Yes, it is. And that's where King Philip IV of France ordered the arrest of all the Knights Templar throughout his kingdom. Well, we know hundreds were taken into custody. The accusations were pretty serious. Heresy, blasphemy, secret rituals, idol worship. And among those accusations was the claim that the Templars worshipped something called Baphomet.
So that's our starting point?
Yeah, that's our starting point.
Okay, then who or what was he supposed to be?
Well, that's the problem. Nobody seems to agree.
What about the people making the accusations?
Yeah, well, not even them. Some accounts mention a head, others describe an idol. Some descriptions don't match either of those at all. And when you start reading the records, it becomes clear very quickly that everyone wasn't talking about the same thing.
Well, that seems like an important detail.
Well, yeah, it's a huge detail because if we had dozens of independent descriptions all saying exactly the same thing, we'd have a much better idea of what was being discussed. Instead, we have conflicting statements from people being questioned under extreme, unpleasant circumstances.
Well, let's just call that what it is. A lot of these confessions came from torture.
They did, and that's something we have to keep in mind throughout this entire story.
People will say anything under torture.
Exactly. And we got to keep in mind that doesn't mean every confession was false. It doesn't automatically mean every accusation was fabricated. But it does mean we have to be very careful when treating these statements as any kind of reliable evidence.
Well, if somebody's stretching me on a rack, I might tell them Baphomet looked like my mailman if I thought it would make them stop.
Yeah, that's true. And that's one of the reasons historians approach these records cautiously, because we're not reading eyewitness statements given voluntarily. we're reading statements collected during one of the most notorious investigations in medieval Europe.
So we're standing on shaky ground.
Very shaky ground. And that's before we even get to the strangest part of it.
And that is?
Well, there's a very real possibility that Baphomet may not have originally referred to a demon at all.
Now, wait. I know you're a Templar, but don't you think you might be stretching it a little?
No, actually, I'm kind of being careful.
Really?
Yeah.
Because you just told me Baphomet might not have originally been a demon, and now I'm waiting to hear where this is going.
Well, fair enough then. Let's start with the name itself. One of the oldest theories surrounding Baphomet is that the name may be a corruption of Muhammad, which was a common medieval European spelling of Muhammad.
You mean the Prophet Muhammad?
Exactly.
Okay, that's not where I thought this was going to go.
Well, most people don't. When people hear Baphomet, they immediately picture the goat-headed figure. They think demons, Satanism, the occult. Very few people think medieval Europe, the Crusades, and possibly contact with Islamic culture.
So where does this theory come from?
Partly from the timing. Remember, the Knights Templar spent nearly 2 centuries in the Holy Land. They weren't sitting in France the entire time. They were living, fighting, negotiating, trading, interacting with people from different cultures and religions on a daily basis.
Like who?
Muslims, Jews, Eastern Christians, all of them. And whether people like it or not, exposure to different cultures changes people.
Well, that's human nature.
Exactly. Now, I want to be very careful here because this is where people start hearing things that aren't being said. I'm not suggesting the Templars converted to Islam. I'm not suggesting they secretly abandoned Christianity. And I'm certainly not claiming there's proof that Baphomet was Muhammad.
Sounds like you're covering your butt there.
Well, yeah, because the evidence doesn't simply support making those claims, right? What I am saying is that some historians have suggested the name Baphomet may have evolved from Muhammad. If that's true, then the original accusation may have had less to do with demon worship and more to do with the suspicions that the Templars have become influenced by ideas from the Islamic world.
Well, that's a pretty serious accusation in 14th century France.
Very serious. We have to remember the environment. Europe was deeply Christian. The Crusades had been fought for generations. And if someone wanted to accuse a powerful military order of heresy, suggesting that they adopted foreign religious ideas, well, that would have been explosive.
And probably believable to some people.
Very believable. I mean, the Templars had spent decades in places most Europeans would never see. They knew different languages. They came from different parts of the countries. They interacted with different cultures. They had knowledge and experiences that made them seem mysterious to people back home.
So you're saying the accusation doesn't have to be true to be effective?
Exactly, especially when the King of France owes them so much money. And that's where my own experience comes into this.
Oh boy, here we go.
Well, as a Freemason and a Knight Templar, Deb, one of the things I was taught in the orders is that some of the accusations against the Templars may have stemmed from their exposure to other cultures and religions during their time in the Holy Land.
They teach that? Is that something you're allowed to talk about?
Well, they taught it to me, and I'm talking about it, so it is what it is. And now, that doesn't make it historically proven. There's a difference between tradition and evidence, but it is part of what was passed down in the orders.
So the idea wasn't that they became Muslims. It was that they may have started looking at religion differently.
Yeah, that's a much better way to put it.
Well, I'm sure that made church authorities quite nervous.
Well, yeah, very nervous. Imagine a group of powerful knights returning from the Holy Land with broader perspectives of religion, prophets, and cultures, right? Whether those suspicions were justified or not almost becomes secondary to this thing, because once that accusation takes hold, it starts creating its own movement.
Suddenly, they're not just knights anymore. They're potential heretics the king is in debt to.
Right, and that's where Baphomet enters the story.
But it still doesn't explain the goat's head.
No, and that's because we're still several centuries too early.
What?
Yeah, the goat head isn't even in the story yet.
You're kidding.
No. In fact, that's one of the biggest surprises to this entire mystery. People think the Templars were accused of worshiping the same Baphomet we see on posters, tattoos, books, websites, and everything today, right? But the evidence doesn't support that.
So we've spent all this time talking about Baphomet, and the image everybody knows doesn't even exist yet?
Yeah, not even close. And that's where the story takes a very strange turn, because after the Templar trials, Baphomet almost disappears.
What do you mean disappears?
I mean exactly that. The name shows up in the accusations against the Templars, creates all kinds of controversy, and then largely fades into the background. Some aren't even sure if the translation at the time was correct, and that's how Baphomet entered the story.
Well, that's weird.
Yeah, it's very weird. Think about it. If Baphomet had been some major demon recognized throughout Europe, you'd expect to find references everywhere. You'd expect theologians writing about it. You'd expect demonologists cataloging it, right? You'd expect centuries of records discussing it.
And that doesn't happen?
No, not really, at least not to the degree people might expect.
So one of the most recognizable occult figures in the world basically vanishes.
Yeah, for centuries.
It's kind of crazy when you think about it.
It is, especially when you consider how recognizable the image is today.
So you're saying if you ask people to name a demon, Baphomet would be at the top of the list?
Yeah, exactly. And, like you, most people would think Satan, right?
Mm-hmm.
They probably wouldn't say the name Baphomet, which is the name. They would say Satan. But when you start digging through the historical record, Baphomet is surprisingly difficult to pin down.
So what happened?
For a long time, not much. Then we get to the 19th century.
Is this where the goat head finally appears?
Yeah, now we're getting there. In 1854, a French occultist named Elisephus Levi published a drawing that would permanently change the way people view Baphomet.
This is the image everybody knows?
Yeah, pretty much. The goat head, the horns, the torch between them, one arm raised, one arm lowered, male and female, the words salve and coagula written on the arms. If you've seen an image of Baphomet, chances are you've seen some version of Levi's drawing.
So he just made it up?
Well, yeah, that's where people start arguing.
Well, of course they do.
Levi wasn't claiming he discovered a hidden photograph of Baphomet or anything. He wasn't saying this is exactly what the Templars worshipped. What he created was a symbolic figure for general occult purposes.
Symbolic of what?
Balance, opposites, duality, the union of things people normally think of as separate, male and female, light and darkness, yin and yang, spirit and matter, above and below.
That doesn't sound much like Satan.
Not necessarily, and that's one of the most surprising parts of the story, because many people today see the image and immediately think evil. Levi was thinking in terms of occult philosophy and symbolism.
So when he drew it, he wasn't sitting there sketching the devil?
No, not from what he wrote.
Then how did we get from that to where we are today?
Well, that's where things start to get interesting again, because once the image existed, it started taking on a life of its own.
So it took on a meaning beyond what the creator intended?
Yes, ma'am. The original meaning starts in one place. Over time, people reinterpret it, adapt it, and attach new meanings to it. Eventually, the newer version becomes more familiar than the original one.
So you're saying Baphomet may have gone through the same process as the article you wrote about the word warlock?
Well, I think there's a strong argument that it did, because by the late 19th and 20th centuries, many people were no longer looking at Levi's symbolism at all. They were looking at a goat-headed figure and assigning their own meanings to it.
Including Satan.
Including Satan. And once that connection started taking hold, it became harder and harder to separate the two.
So we've gone from a mysterious name in the Templar trials to a symbolic drawing in the 1800s.
Right.
And somehow we're still not at Satan yet.
Well, not completely, because there's one more chapter in this story, and it's probably the chapter that shaped modern public opinion more than any other.
Let me guess. This is where the Church of Satan enters the picture.
Exactly, Deb. Now, before we go any further, I want to be careful here because people tend to hear things that aren't being said.
Seems to be a theme in this episode, and with you.
Oh, really? It is, actually. I mean, the Church of Satan didn't create Baphomet. They didn't create the name. And they didn't create the image that Levi drew.
But they definitely embraced it, right?
Yeah, absolutely they did. When Anton LaVey founded the Church of Satan in the 1960s, he adopted the sigil of Baphomet as the organization's official symbol.
Is that the goat head inside the upside-down pentagram?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I mean, the design featured a goat's head within an inverted pentagram surrounded by Hebrew characters spelling Leviathan, which is in the Bible. While it wasn't a direct copy of Levi's famous drawing, the connection was obvious. For many people, this became their first exposure to Baphomet.
And that's where the association really starts taking hold.
Yeah, it does. The symbol appeared on the cover of the Satanic Bible on Church of Satan materials and eventually throughout popular culture. By that point, most people weren't asking where Baphomet came from or anything anymore. They simply associated the image with Satanism and eventually Satan himself.
And that's probably where most people first encountered it.
Or at least where the association became cemented in popular culture, because once that symbol became publicly associated with Satanism, the average person no longer saw a complicated occult symbol or mysterious historical figure. They saw Satan.
Which brings us back to the question we started with.
Exactly. How did Baphomet become Satan?
And the answer seems to be slowly.
Very slowly, if you look at it this way. A mysterious name appears in accusations against the Templars. The descriptions don't agree. The evidence is questionable, and the name nearly disappears. Then a French occultist creates an image that becomes famous. A religious movement adopts that imagery. Now, if you want to say it changed quickly, at this point, it probably did. The Church of Satan uses it, and popular culture takes over. Then, eventually, most people assumed the final version was the original version.
Which is kind of what happened with the word warlock.
It is. The details are different, but the process feels very similar.
That's what surprises me most. I thought we were going to be discussing a demon.
I'm sure a lot of people probably did.
Instead, it turned out to be a discussion about history, symbols, and how ideas change over time.
And honestly, I think that's why this story matters. Because whether someone sees Baphomet as a demon, a symbol, a religious image, an occult figure, or something else entirely, is actually their business. But what interested me was how many people are absolutely certain they know what Baphomet is. Yet, when you start tracing the history, certainty becomes surprisingly difficult to find.
So after all your research, where did you land?
Well, I land exactly where I started. I don't think we know with certainty who or what Baphomet originally was, but I know what it really isn't.
That's probably going to frustrate people.
Well, yeah. I mean, the historical record leaves us with some possibilities, Deb. I mean, we got theories, accusations, traditions, and interpretations that could be wrong. What it doesn't leave us is with a clear answer.
700 years later, and people are still arguing about it?
Well, yes, ma'am, they are. And maybe that's the real legacy of Baphomet. Not the image, not the accusations, not even the mystery itself. The fact that it only took one generation to decide who Baphomet is. How did a mysterious name from a Templar trial become one of the most recognizable images in the modern world? That's a story that still isn't finished at all. Because whether you approach this topic as history, religion, folklore, the occult, or just simple curiosity, the conversation is far from over. Well, at least until next time when we discuss another tale yet to be told.
Thanks for listening to Forever Paranormal. Follow, rate, and share the show. It helps others find us and keeps the stories coming. Step inside the crypt for archive and exclusive episodes at foreverparanormal.com. And keep up with my latest books and research at wjbrendel.com. And until next time, remember, the veil is always thinner than you think.